And bizarrely, I've heard from many people who think that because he is rich, he must be deeply knowledgeable about economics, at the very least. No. And you should read what largely conservative economists have written about the prospects of a Trump presidency. They are terrified of this. The idea that we might want to default on our national debt, that we can renegotiate it, as though the United States were a golf course or a casino that was going under. We're talking about a world destabilizing bit of stupidity. And only.
So would it be a disaster if the President of the United States defaulted on the U.S. national debt? Yeah, it would, of course. But is that what Donald Trump wants to do? No, not at all. So why would Sam Harris say that? I'll get to why later on. But basically, Donald Trump said something about he wants to play around with the national debt, and a certain somebody said, well, I think that means he wants to default. And then the media, they just ran with it, and they're like, oh my God, Donald Trump wants to default on the debt, and that'd be a huge disaster. But yeah, no, Donald Trump even clarified that no, that's not what he wants to do, and I'll play that at the end. But I'll just explain. He understands the inverse correlation of interest rates and bond prices. What that means is when interest rates go up, debt becomes cheaper, and he wants to buy back some portion of the national debt at a discount when interest rates go up without any form of default. So how does that work? So at 2%, every $1 million, a bond is a contract with a fixed payment every year, and at 2%, it'll give you $20K per million, right? And it pays that every single year, no matter what. Like when you sell that bond, it has that fixed coupon. So what happens if all of a sudden interest rates go up to 4% on the market, right? And you want to sell $1 million worth of your 2% bonds. How do you do that? So let's just say this happens in one day. It goes from 2% to 4% in one day. And I'll explain why that's significant later, but each new bond yield at the new rate would pay $40,000 a year. All new bonds issued at 4% would be a contract for 10 years, in this case, $40,000 every single year, right? So obviously, you'd have to sell more of these to compensate for the extra income, because who's going to spend $1 million on U.S. government debt that pays $20,000 a year when they could just buy other of the exact same debt that pays $40,000 a year, right? So if you're selling it on the open market, you have to compensate for that. So the obvious answer would be, how much debt would you have to sell to compensate? Would be $2 million, right? Because then those $2 million at 2% would yield $40,000, right? No, there's a little more to it than that, and I'm going to have to write different numbers here, but I'll explain. So because to get the face value of the bond back when it matures, that has to be taken into consideration. So if you buy $1 million worth of 10-year debt at 4%, in 10 years, it'll eventually pay out $1.4 million. So at 2%, $1.2 million at 2% yields $1.44 million in 10 years. So that's a little bit more, so you have to go down a little bit and say, all right, so to equal the same thing at 4%, $1.15 million worth of bonds with a 2% yield will eventually in 10 years yield $1.38 million. So you can buy this debt back on the open market. If they just decide, I don't want to hold this debt anymore for whatever reason, they sell it on the open market, and anybody, including the U.S. government, they can buy it back. So if the U.S. government, if they're buying it back, that's debt to them, so they don't owe that money anymore, right? So in this scenario, for every million or $1 billion they spend on the open market buying debt back, they will get 1.16 or whatever. I didn't go through and do the whole calculation. I just left it there, and I didn't bother with a bond calculator. I'm not a bond trader. This is esoteric knowledge. Like, not many people know about this. The only people who need to know about this are bond traders. and I know about it for other reasons. I don't have to use bond calculators, so you get the idea, right? So for every $1 billion that the government spends buying back this debt on the open market with no defaults whatsoever, they get back $1.16 billion worth of debt that they just don't owe anymore. So that's a pretty good discount, right? That is what Donald Trump was talking about. So yes, Donald Trump understands the bond market better than anybody who's ever been president, anybody who's ever run for president. Now, will this work? I mean, it does take fiscal conservatism, I guess, but I mean, if the discount is attractive enough, you can even issue short-term debt, which has a lower interest rate, and buy it back. And you instantly get that savings. So yeah, he probably could do this, but this is not. That's not the point. The point is Donald Trump understands the bond market better than anybody who's ever run for president, and Sam Harris does not. Sam Harris has absolutely no idea what he's talking about when it comes to the bond market. Now, when it comes to neurosurgery and whatnot, I'm sure he knows far more than myself for sure, and I'm pretty sure he knows a lot more than Donald Trump too. But you don't see Donald Trump going around saying, "Oh, like he's just stabbing people in the brain and just, oh my God, he's like killing all these people, and he has no idea what he's doing." No, he's never said that. That'd be a stupid thing to say. Just like calling Donald Trump a buffoon for claiming that for wanting to default on the debt, and he's going to ruin the economy by defaulting on the debt. Claiming that Donald Trump's a buffoon for wanting to do that makes you look kind of silly. So, yeah, I mean, Sam Harris, he's a great guy. He's a smart guy for sure, but he's wrong about this, and he keeps saying it again and again, even though he's completely wrong. So, where does all this come from anyway? Like, why does Sam Harris and the media? Where did this come from? So Peter Schiff is the guy who started this whole rumor that Donald Trump wants to default on the debt. Now, who is Peter Schiff? Coincidentally, I used to make videos about him back in 2008, 9, and 10, explaining why he was wrong about everything and why he would continue to be wrong about everything for a long time. And guess what? He's been wrong about absolutely everything. In fact, I even called him out in 2010. I busted him lying about his track record. And it got so bad, he responded to it with the most ridiculous thing ever. I made a video about that fairly recently, just sort of recapping the time I made Peter Schiff look like a complete... Oh, I made him look like a complete fool a bunch of times. He made himself look like a complete fool a bunch of times. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is, he is the source of this claim, and the financially illiterate media, they just ran with it like, oh well, this guy, he says he's a financial investment guru who's been right about everything, and yeah, he says that Donald Trump wants to default on the debt, and that would be a disaster. Oh my God! Actually, Peter Schiff doesn't think that would be a disaster. He wants the U.S. to default on the debt. He was like, oh, he exposed America's secret that they can't pay back the debt, and he's going to renegotiate the debt, and he likes that idea. But no, that's not at all. That's not at all the case. And I'm sure Sam Harris probably knows some economist, and he heard that Donald Trump wants to default on the debt, and he asked some economist, so do you think that would be a bad idea? And this guy, again, he just gets his news from the media. He's like, oh, well, yeah, I heard he wants to default on the debt. That would be a bad idea. And they're right about that. But that's not what Donald Trump wants to do, as I've explained. In fact, here is Donald Trump responding to this.
Well, you say the truth was really misrepresented. I'll tell you, this was
about the minimum wage,
and that's the buyback of debt. I said if we can buy back government debt at a discount, in other words, if interest rates go up and we can buy bonds back at a discount, if we are liquid enough as a country, we should do that. In other words, we can buy back debt at a discount. People said, I want to go and buy debt and default on debt, and I mean, these people are crazy. This is the United States government. First of all, you never have to default because you print the money. I hate to tell you. Okay?
True.
So there's never a default. But the point is, it was reported in the New York Times incorrectly.
That you said you would go to creditors and make them take less.
It was reported in the failing New
He doesn't
York
get
Times
it.
and other
He never will.
That I want to default on debt. You know, I'm the king of debt. I understand debt better than probably anybody. I know how to deal with debt so very well. I love debt, but you know, debt is tricky and it's dangerous, and you have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. But let me just tell you, if there's a chance to buy back debt at a discount, in other words, interest rates go up and the bonds go down, and
right.
you can buy debt. That's what I'm talking about. People Reuters wrote, "Oh, Trump wants to go with key creditors and buy debt at a discount." Now, there could even be a time when somebody comes in, but with the government, they're never going to walk in and say, "Do me a favor, will you buy my debt at this discount?" In business, that happens all the time. I bought mortgages back when the market went bad. I bought mortgages back at tremendous discounts. And I love doing that. I mean, there's nothing like it. Actually, it gives me a great thrill. But in the United States with bonds, that won't happen because, you know, in theory, the market doesn't go down so that you default on debt. And that's what happens. So here's the story. Just to have it corrected. If we have an opportunity where interest rates go up and you can buy debt back at a discount, I always like to be able to do that if you can do it. But that's all I was talking about. They have it like I'm going to go back to creditors.
Yes,
and I'm going
that's
to
what they were reporting.
No, he doesn't understand. He just doesn't. Okay, Donald Trump didn't explain that very well, but obviously that guy doesn't understand what he's talking about, and he never will, because he's financially illiterate. Just like the rest of the media, they don't even want to know. They just want to say, "Oh, Donald Trump, he wants to default on the debt. He's a moron. He's a buffoon." No. He understands it very well. The media, they are stupid. They're ignorant, and they're full of crap. Not just about this, about a whole bunch of things. Everybody knows that now. But anyway, on this point, I haven't seen anybody clarify this other than Donald Trump, and he was obviously misunderstood. So yeah, here's the truth. Sam Harris doesn't know anything about the bond market. Donald Trump knows a lot about it.